Kenny Omega is one of AEW's biggest stars, and at this point, he is also the final piece in truly restoring the feeling of what AEW is all about. Omega has been out with injury or suspension and on and off over the last couple of years, and it has led to a cooling down of the Kenny Omega character and coincidentally, a cooling down of the AEW product that many fans did not expect to take place. When AEW first started, it was centered around the Young Bucks as the tag team leaders, as well as Kenny Omega and Cody Rhodes, thought to be the two people who would lead the singles competition. Now, while Cody eventually did leave AEW, Kenny was able to establish himself as not only a true single star in AEW and North American television, but also as the best bout machine. He lived up to that namesake with his historic AEW World Championship run in 2020 and 2021. However, ever since then, the injuries as well as the suspensions that I had mentioned earlier had taken their toll, and we have not gotten a constant stream of Kenny Omega storyline or matches on AEW TV since then. We thought that we were going to get that in 2023. However, at the end of the year, it was revealed that Kenny Omega was suffering from diverticulitis, and eventually it caused him to miss the majority of 2024. And at this point, we are still waiting for Kenny Omega to make his return. And while we all hope and pray that Kenny Omega does make a full recovery and is able to return at a very healthy pace, the reality is, when you look at the problems that AEW has had over the last couple of years, one of the biggest problems has been injury. You've had the likes of Kenny Omega, CM Punk, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, and Jamie Hayter, all well-established stars out with injuries that have really cooled down from the product's biggest hype period back in 2021. And one of the reasons why AEW was doing so well in 2021, and the perception was that they were the best wrestling show on the block, was because they had a stacked roster like no other. One of the biggest and best rosters that had a great combination of established legends, established stars, as well as homegrown acts and stars of the future. And once those stars started to become injured, it really took some momentum out of the product. However, over the last year, we have seen many of those people come back. Jamie Hayter returned, Britt Baker returned, we saw Hangman Adam Page return after a prolonged period away from television, and one of the final pieces to the puzzle to help truly restore the feeling of AEW is Kenny Omega. There's a lot that can be said about Kenny Omega's contributions to professional wrestling over the years, but one of the biggest things for AEW is that Omega is a guy who, no matter what he's doing, where he is, constantly is a threat in the world title picture, constantly serves as a threat in the main event scene for the company. He is a franchise player in that. And when you have a guy like that, you want to make sure that he is there not only on your TV, but doing stuff that is important. As when you do that, it brings in viewers and makes your show even more must-see. And given that they brought all these other pieces back, Omega being the last piece to be brought back is so critical, because once you do that, you have a roster where you're looking at the top being Bryan Danielson, Swerve Strickland, Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, as well as a lot of others. You also, on the women's side, have Britt Baker, Mercedes Moné, Jamie Hayter, Toni Storm, Mariah May rounding out the main event scene there. Those are some heavy hitters when you're talking about star power, and it speaks to what AEW has been missing over the past couple of years, that big time star power. And when you bolster the ranks with the likes of Okada, with the likes of Will Ospreay in the main event scene, with the likes of MJF and others, Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander in the women's division, this is truly one of the best rosters ever assembled in professional wrestling history. And the last piece to making it that is Kenny Omega. And when Kenny Omega does eventually return, like we all hope and pray he will, I think it will lead to an uptick in business for AEW. And I don't necessarily mean that the ratings are going to go back to being 1.1 million every week. However, I think it's going to solve one of the biggest perceptions of AEW, that being the decline in attendance over the past couple of years. AEW was averaging somewhere around 5,000 people per show back in 2021 into 2022, and now that has dipped for Dynamite significantly to about 3,000, and even more so for Collision, as tickets are in the thousands to 2,000s for that show on an average basis, which is not great when that's what the narrative is and that's what people online are talking about. At the end of the day, you can put on a great show, and 9 out of 10 times Collision, Dynamite are fantastic wrestling shows. But for the people who don't watch and many people who talk about it online, the thing they're focusing on isn't necessarily the wrestling. It is the fact that AEW isn't selling tickets. It's something that they were lauded for in 2021 because they were able to do it so quickly and grow so quickly back in the day. But now we're sitting at a point where it's much harder for them to do that. But I think bringing Omega back and reestablishing AEW's roster as a star-studded force will eventually lead to an uptick in business. And you combine that with hopefully a larger marketing budget for AEW once this new media rights deal really kicks in, then it becomes even easier for AEW to execute that, because then they can put their talent, like Kenny Omega, out there front and center and let them know and remind the fans why AEW is a product worth coming to see. And behind Omega, behind all of the other big names I stated earlier, it is possible for AEW to truly restore the feeling. It is possible for AEW to once again become the pro wrestling juggernaut that we all thought it could be. And it is possible for AEW to once again put Kenny Omega in the world title picture, doing something that they did during their biggest time ever in 2021, and hopefully restoring that feeling. Because one thing that is true is that in 2021, Kenny Omega established himself as a big-time main event star in North America. And reminding the fans what that is all about and why that was so important to AEW is critical. And I think all it's going to take is for Omega to one more time hold up that AEW World Championship. But hey, I guess we'll see.